The clock was ticking. Every second, the internet was exploding with whispers, posts, and screenshots that no one could fully verify. Headlines were flashing like a strobe light in the dark. Palace leak sparks chaos over Archie Harrison's school records. Royal records mystery. Wrong names? Wrong facts. The truth is hidden, and Prince Harry flies back to UK amid alleged school record leak. But what was really happening behind those closed palace doors? That was the question everyone was asking, and the answer, if it even existed, was buried beneath layers of secrecy, speculation, and an avalanche of public opinion. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine being Prince Harry for a moment. You're thousands of miles from home, trying to build a life away from relentless media scrutiny, when suddenly a rumor so explosive hits the news cycle that it could reshape public perception overnight. Rumors about your son's records, about official documents allegedly being inconsistent, and speculation suggesting administrative errors that could ignite a media storm. You can feel the tension spike. Every headline reads like a trigger. Every social media comment is a dart. And suddenly, your world, already tense with decades of royal scrutiny, feels smaller, tighter, almost suffocating. This is the world of modern royalty, where a single leak, true or false, can dominate global conversation in hours. So, what exactly started this frenzy? Sources close to the palace claim there were unusual requests made regarding school documents. School administrators, private correspondents, and online sleuths noticed inconsistencies in publicly accessible data, though none confirmed any actual wrongdoing. Yet, in the echo chamber of social media, inconsistencies often sound like conspiracies. And as we all know, in today's digital age, speculation travels faster than facts. By the time a verified statement is released, or sometimes never released at all, the story has already taken on a life of its own. It has become, in essence, a character of its own, with a plotline dictated not by reality, but by imagination, fear, and fascination. The online world thrives on curiosity gaps. Have you ever noticed how the tiniest hint of mystery can capture attention better than a confirmed fact? This is exactly what happened here. A screenshot appeared on a private forum. One user suggested that a document seemed to list the wrong name. Another claimed to have insider knowledge. And then influencers picked it up, turning casual speculation into viral headlines. Suddenly, everyone, from casual readers to serious journalists, was asking the same question. Could this be true? Could the royal records actually contain discrepancies? And, more importantly, what would it mean if they did? Let's pause for a moment and think about what's really at stake. We're talking about a family that has spent decades under the microscope of global attention. Every decision, every word, every document becomes a potential headline. Rumors don't just affect public perception. They ripple through social institutions, influence media narratives, and spark debates that range from the trivial to the profoundly consequential. One misstep, one leak, and the conversation shifts from the private sphere into a public spectacle. And that's exactly what seems to have happened here. The alleged inconsistencies in the school records didn't just become a talking point. They became a trigger for a larger, more intense examination of the royal family's private life. Prince Harry, according to reports circulating online, reacted swiftly. The urgency was palpable. Flight arrangements were made, schedules altered, and suddenly a man known for his calm, yet determined demeanor was moving at a speed dictated by circumstance rather than comfort. But why? Why would he feel the need to return to the UK immediately? That question alone fueled more speculation. Was he rushing to verify documents? To confront officials? Or simply to shield his family from an onslaught of unfounded rumors? Each potential explanation added fuel to the fire, making the narrative richer, more urgent, and more dramatic for those watching from afar. We also have to consider the psychology of public reaction. There's something magnetic about a perceived royal scandal, even when it may not exist. Humans are drawn to stories of power, secrecy, and potential missteps. We want to peek behind the curtain. And when a story involves a child, especially one in the public eye, the emotional intensity spikes. This is a story that naturally invites questions. How much is true? Who is responsible for the error? And, perhaps most importantly, What consequences could emerge from a simple administrative misstep, whether real or imagined? In parallel, media outlets began to weigh in. Tabloids thrived on drama. Online news portals optimized for clicks published fast, sometimes unverified claims, and social media users amplified each version of the story like a game of telephone on steroids. Each retelling became more elaborate, more urgent, and often less accurate. In a way, the narrative became a living organism, growing and changing shape as it moved through cyberspace. And while some outlets cautioned readers, reminding them that no verified reports confirmed the claims, the allure of a mysterious document, a rumored inconsistency, and a prince racing back home was irresistible. People didn't just read the news. They participated in it, sharing theories, screenshots, and insider tips, as if they were part of the unfolding drama. But let's not forget the human element behind all this speculation. At the center of the storm is a family navigating intense scrutiny, with a young child who has no control over how the world perceives him. Imagine being Archie Harrison in this scenario, a child whose life is dissected by strangers online, whose details, even rumors about paperwork, become public talking points. There's a vulnerability here that most people overlook. While the headlines focus on leaks, discrepancies, and potential conflicts, there is a real family at the heart of it, managing emotions, logistics, and protection, all while being constantly observed. The stakes are personal, emotional, and incredibly high, even if the initial spark of this story may have originated in misunderstanding or exaggeration. Now, let's zoom in on the reactions within the palace itself. Or at least, the reactions we can reasonably infer from reported activity. Staff members likely felt a mixture of urgency and caution. Protocols exist for a reason, and leaks or rumors, even unfounded ones, must be addressed swiftly to maintain credibility and order. Meetings may have been called, communications drafted, and contingency plans considered. Meanwhile, media relations teams must walk the fine line between transparency and protection, knowing that any statement can escalate or mitigate public reaction. Behind the polished exterior of royal announcements lies a complex web of human decision-making, strategic communication, and calculated responses. And when a rumor involves a child, the margin for error narrows dramatically. This brings us to the central question driving the curiosity gap that keeps audiences hooked. What really happened? Is there any truth to the claims circulating online? Or is this merely another example of how quickly misinformation can spiral out of control in the digital age? Every new update adds tension, every contradictory report creates suspense, and every minor detail feels like a potential bombshell. For viewers, readers, and social media participants, the line between reality and speculation blurs. The narrative becomes both a story and a puzzle. A puzzle everyone feels compelled to solve, even when some pieces may be missing, misleading, or deliberately altered. And here's the kicker. Even as Prince Harry allegedly moved to respond, the narrative had already shifted. The public's imagination had taken over. Speculation about wrong names or discrepancies fueled debates about transparency, trust, and legacy. Suddenly, what might have been a minor administrative detail transformed into a full-blown storyline with chapters, characters, and plot twists of its own. Social media threads sprawled into thousands of comments, each user theorizing, analyzing, or simply reacting emotionally. The story was no longer confined to documents or facts. It had become a shared experience, a collective drama unfolding in real time. And yet, as dramatic as it seems, the story is far from over. The palace has not released verified statements clarifying the so-called discrepancies. Social media speculation continues unabated. Every hour, the rumor grows, mutates, and intensifies, keeping audiences on edge, waiting for the next update, the next confirmation, or the next twist. And this is precisely why stories like this capture attention so effectively. The combination of uncertainty, high stakes, emotional investment, and limited verified information creates a perfect storm of engagement. It's a story designed to be followed, shared, and debated, and that's exactly what's happening. But just when it seems like we might have reached the height of tension, something unexpected happens. A new post appears on an obscure forum, hinting at a possible timeline of events, suggesting actions taken behind closed doors, and raising questions that no one outside the palace staff could answer. This new development injects even more urgency into the narrative. Suddenly, the story is no longer just about documents or rumors. It's about timing, secrecy, and the rapid responses of a family caught in the glare of global attention. What comes next is unknown, unpredictable, and, as always, electrifying for those following the unfolding events. And so, as the world watches, the clock continues to tick. Questions remain unanswered. Speculation thrives. And Prince Harry's return to the UK, whether immediate or delayed, documented or inferred, serves as a catalyst for more questions than answers. For viewers, followers, and casual observers, this is the moment where curiosity, emotion, and drama collide. It's the start of a story that promises twists, tension, and revelations, all unfolding under the relentless spotlight of public attention. The moment Prince Harry allegedly caught wind of the rumored school record discrepancies, the world seemed to shrink around him. For someone who had spent years navigating the intricate web of royal expectations, media scrutiny, and public opinion, the situation was like a familiar storm, but one with new, unpredictable currents. Imagine being thousands of miles away from home, trying to build a life of relative privacy, when suddenly the internet ignites with speculation about your family. It's one thing to read headlines, but quite another to feel the pulse of global curiosity, criticism, and conjecture bearing down in real time. At first glance, the story seems simple: a rumor about school records, a possible clerical error, maybe a mismatch in names or dates. But in the modern age of instantaneous communication, simplicity is deceptive. The rumor became a wildfire because every digital platform, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, private forums, amplified it differently. One person posts a screenshot of a purported document. Another interprets it with their own assumptions. Then a third adds context that may or may not be accurate. Within hours, the narrative morphs, branching into multiple versions, each more elaborate and dramatic than the last. And somewhere in this chaotic web is a family that must respond, adapt, and protect its youngest member, all while the world watches with insatiable curiosity. Prince Harry, by all reports, acted quickly. Whether the response was planned or impulsive, the speed at which he supposedly organized travel arrangements to return to the UK was unprecedented. Analysts and media commentators immediately speculated about the motivations behind the move. Was it a defensive measure to ensure the integrity of his son's documents? A preemptive strategy to counter potential misreporting by the press? Or simply an instinctive protective act by a father unwilling to let speculation dictate his child's reality? The truth, as always, is likely a mixture of all three, and yet, the details remain tantalizingly out of reach. As the story developed, attention turned to the documents themselves. What exactly were the alleged inconsistencies? Some posts suggested minor errors, a misspelled name, a date off by a few days. Others hinted at more significant discrepancies, implying that public perception could be manipulated if the errors were not corrected swiftly. And as always, uncertainty fueled curiosity. When official clarification is absent or delayed, the imagination fills in the gaps. This is the engine that drives engagement, retention, and speculation, and it is precisely why digital audiences remain glued to every emerging headline, every whispered confirmation, and every conflicting post. But let's not underestimate the emotional dimensions of this scenario. Think about the stress of a parent suddenly thrust into a high-stakes public narrative involving a child. Imagine scanning dozens of news sources, social media threads, and private messages while trying to maintain composure and make rational decisions. Every misstep could be amplified into headlines. Every statement could be dissected for hidden meanings. And behind the calm, polished public demeanor, there is likely a torrent of anxiety, calculation, and protective instinct. This human element, often obscured by the sensational headlines, is what makes the narrative compelling on a personal level. Audiences aren't just watching a rumor. They are witnessing the emotional and psychological ripple effects of it on real lives. Meanwhile, the media frenzy escalated. Tabloids thrived on the tension, framing every development as potentially catastrophic or scandalous. Online outlets optimize their headlines for clicks, often prioritizing intrigue over verified information. Social media influencers, armed with screenshots and partial interpretations, stoked the fires further. Within hours, a single ambiguous post became a sprawling saga, with new layers, commentary, and debates added constantly. Every observer became a participant, contributing to the evolving story and, in turn, shaping public perception. The rumor was no longer just a statement. It was a living, breathing narrative with momentum and direction, influenced by countless voices across the globe. Adding another layer of complexity, we must consider the historical context. The royal family, especially younger generations, has long been subject to meticulous scrutiny, both official and informal. Previous incidents, whether misreported documents, misunderstood statements, or exaggerated rumors, have shaped the current media ecosystem. Audiences have been conditioned to expect intrigue, drama, and revelation. This cultural conditioning magnifies the impact of even minor stories, transforming them into moments of global attention. In this environment, the alleged school record discrepancies are not just administrative curiosities. They are potential triggers for wider discussions about transparency, privacy, and family dynamics. Amid all this, questions about intent began to circulate. Who benefits from spreading such rumors? Was it a well-meaning attempt at clarification by insiders, or a deliberate strategy by anonymous sources to provoke discussion and controversy? These questions only deepen the curiosity gap. Audiences are naturally drawn to hidden motivations, conspiracies, and the unknown. Every suggestion, every hypothesis, every new twist becomes a magnet for attention. And while the answers remain elusive, the speculation itself creates a narrative arc rich with tension, intrigue, and suspense. From a logistical standpoint, Prince Harry's rumored return involved meticulous planning. Flights had to be arranged discreetly to avoid excessive public attention. Security measures needed to be considered, not only for his personal safety, but for the safety of his family. Advisors and staff had to coordinate communications, anticipating potential questions from the press while safeguarding sensitive information. Every movement was scrutinized, and even minor deviations from routine fueled speculation. The intersection of practical decision-making and public perception created a dramatic tension that audiences could feel, even from afar. The story had evolved beyond documents. It was now about human action under pressure, decisions made in real time, and the stakes involved in protecting family and reputation. The narrative also highlighted the power and danger of digital media. A single post, interpreted or misinterpreted, can cascade into a global conversation. Once a rumor reaches critical mass, it becomes increasingly difficult to control or correct. Even factual clarifications often arrive too late, drowned out by the noise of speculation and opinion. This phenomenon underscores a broader reality of the modern media landscape. Truth and perception often diverge, and the audience becomes both consumer and participant in the evolving story. In this case, the alleged school record discrepancies became a case study in how information, rumor, and human emotion interact to create high-stakes drama in real time. At the same time, the public's fascination with royal life added fuel to the fire. Audiences are inherently drawn to stories that combine power, secrecy, and potential controversy. The mere suggestion of irregularities in a child's records ignites a complex mixture of curiosity, moral judgment, and emotional investment. Viewers feel personally involved, even though the events unfold thousands of miles away. Social media amplifies this involvement, creating a sense of shared experience, as if the global audience were collectively witnessing the unfolding drama in real time. This emotional engagement is precisely what drives high retention and sustained attention, making the story compelling across multiple platforms. And yet, despite the intensity of speculation, one central fact remains. Verified details are scarce. No official statement confirms that any records contained errors, nor that any action taken was unusual or inappropriate. But the absence of confirmation does not diminish audience interest. In fact, it magnifies it. Humans are naturally drawn to mystery and uncertainty, and the narrative thrives precisely because questions outnumber answers. Each unanswered question acts as a hook, drawing viewers deeper into the story, keeping them engaged, and encouraging them to follow the unfolding developments with a sense of anticipation and urgency. As this first chapter of the story closes, the tension is palpable. The rumor has spread, the alleged discrepancies have captured attention, and Prince Harry's actions, whether reactive, precautionary, or strategic, have added a human dimension to the unfolding drama. The narrative is poised for further escalation, with audiences eager for the next revelation, clarification, or twist. And the beauty and danger of the story is that the next development could come from anywhere: a social media post, an insider leak, or an official statement. In a world of instantaneous communication, the story continues to evolve in unpredictable ways. But just when it seemed the narrative had reached a temporary equilibrium, a new signal emerged, an ambiguous message hinting at follow-up actions that could change everything. The timing, intent, and implications were unclear, but one thing was certain: the story was far from over. And as audiences waited, breathless and speculative, the next chapter promised revelations, decisions, and consequences that no one could fully anticipate. As the rumors surrounding the alleged school record discrepancies continued to spread, the story began to evolve in ways no one could have predicted. What started as a vague social media post had now escalated into a narrative that captivated millions worldwide, drawing in journalists, influencers, and casual observers alike. At the center of this storm was a simple question: how does a single rumor about documents spark such intense public scrutiny? The answer lies not just in the content of the rumor itself, but in the web of perception, emotion, and speculation that surrounds it. From the earliest hours, analysts dissected every detail. The so-called discrepancy was described in various ways: an administrative error, a mismatch in names, or even a minor clerical oversight. Yet each interpretation carried dramatic potential. To some, it was a harmless mistake. To others, it was evidence of hidden tensions within the royal household. The beauty and danger of ambiguity is that it allows the audience to project their own assumptions onto the story. Once the imagination enters, the narrative takes on a life of its own, fueled by conjecture and amplified by social media algorithms designed to prioritize engagement over accuracy. Prince Harry's rumored urgency added another layer of intensity. Observers speculated about the logistics, flight paths, security arrangements, and the timing of his return. Each movement was scrutinized, every delay or change became fodder for discussion, and the question of intent dominated conversation. Was this a preemptive move to manage the story, a reaction to a genuine problem, or simply a father ensuring the well-being of his child? The ambiguity kept audiences hooked, generating debates across forums, comment sections, and news outlets. Every possible explanation seemed plausible, and every plausible explanation only heightened curiosity. But beyond the logistics and speculation, there was an emotional undercurrent that drew attention. Consider the stress a family endures when private matters suddenly become public. A single rumor about school records might seem trivial, but in reality, it triggers a cascade of responses: concern for the child, strategic decision-making, and the constant need to anticipate public perception. For Harry and his family, every action was magnified. Every word could be misinterpreted. Every decision could spark a headline. In this environment, the emotional stakes are enormous. Audiences may focus on documents and rumors, but the true tension lies in the human experience behind them: fear, urgency, and the instinct to protect loved ones. Meanwhile, media coverage intensified. Traditional news outlets, online platforms, and influencers all competed to offer the latest updates. Some focused on analysis, others on speculation, and some deliberately stoked drama. Headlines ranged from cautious to sensational. Prince Harry returns amid record rumors to what the alleged discrepancy could mean for the royal family. In a matter of hours, the story had morphed from a minor administrative question into a global phenomenon. Social media users contributed in real time, adding commentary, screenshots, and personal theories. The rumor had crossed the threshold from isolated post to a shared narrative, where the audience became active participants, shaping the direction of the story itself. One striking aspect of the situation was the speed at which minor details took on enormous significance. A subtle change in phrasing, a small inaccuracy, or a partial statement could be interpreted in multiple ways. In a world of rapid information exchange, context often gets lost, leaving only fragments for the public to interpret. Audiences then fill the gaps, sometimes accurately, often not. This dynamic illustrates a modern phenomenon, the blurring of reality and perception. In the case of the rumored school records, perception had already eclipsed confirmed facts, creating tension and suspense that would carry the narrative forward for days, weeks, or even longer. Complicating matters further, the story intersected with broader narratives about privacy, trust, and transparency. The royal family has long been a subject of fascination, scrutiny, and debate. Every public or private action is analyzed, interpreted, and often judged. When a story involves a child, the emotional stakes rise dramatically. Audiences instinctively sympathize, criticize, or theorize, adding layers of personal investment to the unfolding narrative. The rumored discrepancies weren't just about documents. They became a touchpoint for larger conversations about media ethics, parental protection, and institutional accountability. This intersection of rumor and cultural conversation amplified interest, making the story irresistible for audiences hungry for drama and insight. In parallel, online communities dissected potential motives behind the rumor. Some speculated that it originated from well-meaning insiders. Others suggested it was a coordinated leak, and a few posited more conspiratorial explanations. The variety of theories created additional tension. The more possibilities, the greater the uncertainty. And uncertainty is a powerful driver of engagement. It keeps audiences invested, encourages repeated viewership, and creates an emotional roller coaster where every new post, tweet, or article feels like a potential revelation. By the time an official statement might arrive, or even if it never arrived, the narrative had already reached a level of complexity that could sustain attention indefinitely. Prince Harry's alleged return to the UK also sparked discussion about timing and symbolism. Observers debated why, if the situation was minor, he would move so quickly. Was it a protective measure for Archie? A strategic response to media pressure? Or perhaps both? Each potential explanation offered insights into decision-making under pressure, illustrating the delicate balance between personal concerns and public perception. For the audience, these questions added layers of intrigue. Watching a high-profile figure navigate uncertainty is compelling precisely because it mirrors universal experiences of crisis, choice, and consequence, just on a much larger, more dramatic scale. While the media frenzy unfolded, another factor amplified the story. Human curiosity. People are naturally drawn to incomplete information, unresolved tension, and the possibility of hidden truths. When a rumor hints at secrecy or discrepancy, the audience instinctively seeks answers. This psychological drive, combined with the speed of digital communication, ensures that stories like this spread rapidly and maintain engagement. Every unanswered question becomes a hook. Every conflicting report becomes a cliffhanger. The audience is constantly nudged to stay invested, check for updates, and participate in the discussion. As the hours passed, the story continued to expand, encompassing not just the alleged discrepancies themselves, but reactions, analyses, and speculation about consequences. Social media amplified every voice, creating a feedback loop where speculation fueled further speculation. Each new piece of information, real, partial, or imagined, added momentum. Audiences, journalists, and influencers alike were caught in the cycle, simultaneously consuming, interpreting, and propagating the narrative. In effect, the rumor became more than a rumor. It was a shared experience, a story in which millions of participants were entangled, whether they realized it or not. Yet amidst all the attention and speculation, one truth remained elusive: the verifiable facts. No official statement confirmed that any records contained errors, nor clarified the nature of the alleged discrepancies. But the lack of confirmation did not reduce interest. If anything, it intensified it. Humans are wired to seek closure, to resolve ambiguity, and to make sense of uncertainty. In the absence of definitive answers, the imagination fills the void, creating suspense, drama, and emotional engagement. This dynamic is what sustains attention over extended periods, making the story perfect for a long-form exploration, where each chapter builds tension and leaves audiences eager for more. And then, just when it seemed the narrative had reached a temporary plateau, a new development emerged. A subtle signal, an obscure post, a cryptic comment suggested that follow-up actions were underway, steps that could change the trajectory of the story entirely. The timing, significance, and implications were unclear, but the effect was immediate. Renewed interest, speculation, and anticipation. The narrative had entered a new phase, one where the stakes were higher, the tension greater, and the audience engagement more intense. What would happen next? How would the players respond? And what secrets, if any, might finally come to light? The chapter closes on this note of suspense. The rumor about school records has evolved into a living narrative with multiple layers: administrative details, personal stakes, media amplification, and public fascination. Every development, every reaction, every question builds tension and anticipation for the next twist. The story is far from over. What happens next could redefine public perception, shape media narratives, and, most importantly, impact the family at the center of it all. The audience is left with a single, pressing thought. The next revelation is just around the corner, and when it arrives, it will change everything. By now, the story had taken on a momentum all its own. The alleged school record discrepancies, initially a murmur in private forums, had morphed into a full-blown narrative dominating news cycles, social media platforms, and online discussions. What began as a minor administrative concern now carried the weight of speculation, emotion, and public scrutiny. It's in moments like these that the dynamics of rumor, perception, and human psychology collide, creating stories that grip audiences far beyond the facts themselves. As Prince Harry allegedly prepared for his return to the UK, observers scrutinized every movement. Flight schedules, public appearances, and even minor details about luggage and travel companions became fodder for analysis. In the digital age, nothing is too small to escape attention. Fans, critics, and casual followers alike dissected these details, reading between the lines to infer intentions, predict outcomes, and create their own versions of events. Every perceived delay was questioned, every adjustment interpreted as a signal. And as always, uncertainty fueled engagement. The public doesn't just consume stories, they participate in them, adding layers, conjecture, and commentary that amplify the narrative far beyond its original scope. One of the most compelling aspects of this unfolding saga is the psychological impact of uncertainty. When concrete information is scarce, the mind instinctively seeks patterns, explanations, and resolutions. The alleged school record discrepancies provided the perfect catalyst for this process. Was this a minor clerical error, or was there a deeper issue? Could the documents be misinterpreted, or was the leak itself intentionally timed? Every unanswered question created a tension that audiences found irresistible. Social media algorithms, designed to promote content that generates clicks and engagement, compounded this effect, ensuring that the story remained omnipresent and constantly evolving. Amid the frenzy, the human element remained central. Imagine being Prince Harry in this scenario, navigating the pressures of public life, responding to rumors about your family, and managing logistics under intense scrutiny. The emotional and psychological stakes are immense. Decisions must be made swiftly, but with caution. Actions must be protective, but carefully calibrated to avoid exacerbating public attention. The personal and the public collide in ways few outsiders can fully comprehend. This tension is what makes stories like this compelling. Audiences are drawn not just to the events themselves, but to the human experience at their center. The fear, the urgency, and the instinct to protect loved ones under extraordinary pressure. Media coverage continued to escalate. Traditional outlets, online publications, and influencers all competed to be the first to break new developments, often with limited verification. Headlines became more dramatic, royal documents in question. What does this mean for Archie Harrison? Or Prince Harry's urgent return sparks questions across the globe. Each headline carried an implicit promise. inside knowledge, exclusive details, or revelations that would change the narrative. Audiences, hungry for insight and drama, clicked, shared, and speculated, feeding the cycle of attention and amplification. The rumor had transformed into a cultural event, with real-time engagement and emotional investment from a global audience. In parallel, social media discussions provided a glimpse into collective reasoning and imagination. Forums, comment threads, and social media feeds were filled with theories, interpretations, and emotional responses. Some participants approached the story analytically, dissecting timelines and documents. Others engaged emotionally, projecting feelings of sympathy, concern, or outrage onto the situation. This interplay of logic and emotion heightened the drama. In effect, the story became not just a narrative about alleged discrepancies, but a shared psychological experience, a communal exploration of uncertainty, risk, and consequence. The speculation also highlighted broader societal dynamics. Stories involving prominent figures, particularly those in royal families, often serve as mirrors reflecting cultural values, anxieties, and interests. Discussions about alleged school record discrepancies tapped into debates about privacy, accountability, and the role of public scrutiny in personal affairs. Audiences were not merely consuming entertainment. They were engaging with questions about ethics, trust, and responsibility. Each interpretation, whether sympathetic, critical, or conspiratorial, contributed to a layered narrative that extended far beyond the initial rumor. Amid this evolving context, the role of verification became increasingly important and increasingly elusive. No official statements confirmed any errors, discrepancies, or actions taken. In the absence of authoritative information, speculation filled the void. Experts, journalists, and commentators offered interpretations, analyses, and predictions, each adding weight to the evolving narrative. Even minor clarifications, once issued, risked being misread or selectively amplified. The story had entered a phase where perception mattered as much as fact, where the drama itself was as significant as the underlying reality. Prince Harry's rumored actions added a tangible layer of urgency. Observers debated whether his return was precautionary, reactive, or strategic. Was this a protective measure for his child? A preemptive effort to manage media narratives? Or simply a father responding instinctively to potential threats to his family's privacy and security? Each potential explanation offered insights into the pressures faced by public figures, the interplay between personal and professional considerations, and the complexity of decision-making under scrutiny. For audiences, these questions fueled engagement, prompting repeated attention and a desire to follow every development closely. At the same time, the story highlighted the power dynamics inherent in information dissemination. Those with access to supposed insider knowledge gained influence, while the general public navigated layers of interpretation and conjecture. Social media platforms, designed to amplify engagement, inadvertently reinforced attention to speculation, regardless of verification. The result was a narrative that evolved organically, shaped not only by events but by audience interaction, media framing, and the emotional resonance of the story. In essence, the rumor became a collaborative creation, where participants collectively constructed meaning, suspense, and drama. Adding further complexity, historical context amplified the story's significance. The royal family's long-standing visibility and scrutiny created a framework within which minor events are perceived as potentially monumental. Previous controversies, media coverage, and public interest conditioned audiences to expect intrigue, drama, and revelation. The alleged school record discrepancies, therefore, were interpreted through this lens. A minor administrative matter transformed into a narrative rich with symbolic, cultural, and emotional significance. Audiences instinctively read between the lines, searching for hidden motives, patterns, and consequences, amplifying the story's tension and reach. And then, just as the narrative seemed poised for resolution, a new development hinted at additional layers. A subtle post, a cryptic update, or an unexpected comment suggested that actions were being taken behind the scenes, moves that could reshape perceptions and escalate tension further. The timing, intent, and implications were unclear, but the effect on audience engagement was immediate. Renewed attention, heightened curiosity, and anticipation for the next revelation. The story had entered a new phase, one characterized by increased stakes, complex dynamics, and unresolved questions that demanded follow-up. Chapter 3 closes on this note of suspense. The alleged school record discrepancies have grown into a multi-layered narrative, intertwining human emotion, media dynamics, audience speculation, and cultural resonance. Each new development, real or interpreted, adds momentum, ensuring that attention remains high and curiosity is continuously piqued. The story is far from over. In fact, it is accelerating, poised for further revelations, strategic responses, and emotional stakes that promise to keep audiences engaged. What comes next could redefine not just the narrative itself, but how audiences perceive every element of this unfolding drama. And the next twist is already on the horizon. As the story gained momentum, the narrative surrounding the alleged school record discrepancies began to take on a life of its own. What was initially a rumor, a simple question about documents, dates, and names, had grown into a sprawling, multi-layered saga. Every online post, every headline, and every social media thread added nuance, contradiction, and tension, creating a story that captivated a global audience. At the heart of it all was the human drama, the decisions, the reactions, and the stakes faced by those directly involved, especially Prince Harry and his family. The alleged discrepancies themselves were the spark, but the fire was fueled by uncertainty. People naturally gravitate toward mystery, and the lack of verified information made the story irresistible. A minor clerical error, once amplified by online speculation, becomes a symbol of much larger questions. What is being hidden? Who is responsible? And perhaps most importantly, what will happen next? This interplay between rumor, perception, and curiosity is what keeps audiences hooked, generating engagement that persists far longer than the initial spark of the story. Prince Harry's alleged response continued to drive speculation. The rapid organization of his return to the UK became a focal point for observers. Flight schedules, security arrangements, and timing were analyzed as if every detail contained a hidden message. Was the urgency a reflection of genuine concern for his son, Archie Harrison? Or was it a calculated move to control the narrative before misinformation could gain traction? The dual possibilities created suspense and intrigue. Audiences were not only following events, they were actively interpreting them, forming theories, and anticipating the next development. Media coverage remained intense and multifaceted. Traditional outlets published carefully worded articles, attempting to report responsibly while acknowledging public interest. Tabloids leaned into dramatic narratives, emphasizing urgency and speculation. Influencers and social media commentators added commentary, speculation, and analysis in real time. The result was a feedback loop. Coverage fueled speculation, and speculation fueled further coverage. The narrative became self-perpetuating, evolving organically as new voices contributed, interpretations diverged, and engagement multiplied. It was no longer just a story. It was a living, interactive experience for audiences worldwide. The emotional dimension of the situation cannot be overstated. For Prince Harry and his family, the stress of public scrutiny combined with the protective instinct toward a child creates immense pressure. Every action, every decision, and every communication carries weight. Audiences may focus on the documents or the alleged discrepancies, but the human stakes lie in the emotional and psychological responses of those involved. The urgency, anxiety, and calculated decision-making are what give the narrative depth and resonance. Viewers connect not just with events, but with the emotions underpinning them, deepening engagement and investment. Social media communities played a pivotal role in shaping perceptions. Threads, comments, and posts range from analytical breakdowns of timelines to emotional reactions and conspiratorial theories. Each contribution influenced others, creating a collaborative storytelling process. The rumor became a shared narrative in which audiences were active participants, not merely passive consumers. This interactivity heightened suspense and curiosity, as each new post or interpretation had the potential to reshape understanding or amplify tension. In effect, The audience became co-creators of the unfolding drama. Another factor sustaining engagement was the inherent uncertainty of the situation. No official confirmation clarified the alleged discrepancies, leaving questions unresolved. Uncertainty drives attention because humans are naturally inclined to seek closure and resolution. When definitive answers are unavailable, audiences fill in gaps with speculation, emotional projection, and hypothesis building. Every unanswered question is a hook, every contradiction a cliffhanger, and every minor detail a potential turning point. This dynamic creates sustained engagement over long periods, ensuring that the story remains compelling from the earliest rumor through subsequent developments. As the narrative progressed, discussions about motive and intent emerged. Who might benefit from the rumor? Was it a misunderstanding, a leak by insiders, or an intentional effort to generate public attention? These questions added layers of intrigue. Audiences are drawn to hidden motives, secret agendas, and unexplained actions. Each potential explanation increased the stakes, prompting deeper analysis and speculation. The ambiguity surrounding motives kept attention high, as viewers awaited further clarification or revelation that might confirm or refute competing theories. Historical context amplified the story's impact. The royal family has long been subject to scrutiny, and previous controversies, perceived missteps, and media narratives inform how current events are interpreted. Minor administrative matters, when viewed through this lens, gain disproportionate significance. Audiences instinctively compare present events to historical patterns, seeking consistency, hidden meaning, and precedent. This interplay between past and present enriches the narrative, adding layers of analysis and suspense that keep audiences engaged over time. Amid these dynamics, the potential consequences of the alleged discrepancies loomed large. Public perception, media framing, and internal decision-making all had stakes. Even if the discrepancies were minor or misinterpreted, the story had taken on symbolic importance. It became a lens through which broader questions about trust, transparency, and family responsibility were examined. For audiences, the drama was compelling precisely because it involved high-profile individuals navigating high-stakes circumstances, providing insight into human behavior under pressure, as well as a glimpse into worlds usually obscured from public view. And then, just as the narrative seemed to settle into its rhythm, a new signal emerged, a subtle but significant update hinting at behind-the-scenes action that could escalate the story further. The timing, intention, and potential impact were unclear, but the effect on audience engagement was immediate. Curiosity surged, speculation intensified, and anticipation for the next development reached a fever pitch. The narrative had entered a new phase, one characterized by increased stakes, deeper uncertainty, and the promise of dramatic developments yet to unfold. By this point, the alleged school record discrepancies had developed into a narrative that extended far beyond simple administrative questions. What had started as a rumor on a private forum had evolved into a global conversation, a living story fueled by speculation, emotion, and the relentless amplification of digital media. At the heart of the narrative remained Prince Harry, navigating the pressures of public life while responding to a situation that seemed to escalate with every passing hour. The alleged discrepancies themselves became a focal point for analysis. Observers debated the nature of the supposed errors. Were they minor clerical oversights, misinterpretations, or something more consequential? Each interpretation offered different implications and emotional stakes. The ambiguity allowed the audience to project its own assumptions, fears, and hypotheses onto the story. One small detail, a miswritten date, a slight variation in a name, could be interpreted in multiple ways, each version carrying potential drama and tension. This ambiguity was the engine driving curiosity, engagement, and sustained attention. Prince Harry's alleged return to the UK added a palpable layer of urgency. The rapid response suggested that the situation, however minor in reality, was being treated with high priority. Observers speculated about the motives. Was this a protective measure, a strategic intervention, or both? Every action taken, from travel arrangements to communications with palace staff, was scrutinized and interpreted. Even decisions that seemed routine became magnified under the lens of public attention. This interplay of perception and action created suspense, as audiences followed each development in real time, trying to infer intention and predict consequences. Media coverage continued to amplify the narrative. Traditional outlets aimed for balance and verification, but the speed of the story's spread often outpaced their ability to confirm details. Tabloids leaned heavily into dramatic speculation, framing the alleged discrepancies as potentially scandalous or consequential. Social media influencers contributed by interpreting, commenting, and theorizing, often adding sensational layers that fueled further discussion. In this environment, the rumor became a shared experience, a narrative co-created by multiple actors including journalists, commentators, and global audiences. Each layer of contribution reinforced the story's complexity and heightened its emotional stakes. The psychological dimension of the narrative cannot be overlooked. Humans are naturally drawn to unresolved tension and ambiguity. When facts are scarce or unclear, curiosity intensifies. Audiences instinctively seek closure, attempting to resolve uncertainty by forming interpretations, engaging in debates, or following new developments. The alleged discrepancies, whether real or imagined, provided the perfect context for this dynamic. The combination of high stakes, emotional resonance, and unanswered questions created sustained engagement that continued to build with each passing hour. Within social media communities, speculation thrived. Some users analyzed timelines, cross-referenced past statements, and attempted to reconstruct sequences of events. Others contributed emotional reactions, expressing concern, outrage, or sympathy. Still others offered conspiratorial interpretations, suggesting hidden motives or intentional manipulation. This range of responses highlights the multifaceted nature of audience engagement in the digital age. Consumers are not passive observers. They are active participants shaping the narrative through discussion, interpretation, and amplification. The ambiguity of the situation further heightened tension. No verified statements confirmed errors, clarified intent, or explained the context of the alleged discrepancies. In this vacuum, the imagination filled the void. Speculation became the default mode of engagement, driving continuous attention and interaction. Every new post, every ambiguous comment, and every partial piece of information acted as a hook, keeping audiences invested and eager for subsequent developments. In essence, the uncertainty itself became a central feature of the story, sustaining suspense and emotional intensity. Historical context amplified the drama. The royal family has long been subject to scrutiny, and prior controversies, misunderstandings, and media narratives influenced how audiences interpreted the current situation. Minor details gained disproportionate significance when viewed through the lens of history, creating a sense that even small administrative issues could have wide-ranging implications. This context enriched the narrative, adding layers of interpretation, anticipation, and emotional resonance that extended beyond the immediate events. Amid all this, questions of motive emerged. Who might benefit from the spread of the rumor? Was it an innocent leak, an insider attempting clarification, or a strategic effort to provoke discussion? These questions added depth to the narrative, engaging audiences in speculation that mirrored detective work. Each theory, plausible or implausible, became a hook, further driving curiosity and sustaining attention. The ambiguity surrounding motives heightened suspense, creating a sense that the next revelation could dramatically reshape understanding. The potential consequences of the alleged discrepancies became another source of tension. Even minor errors could be interpreted as indicative of larger issues, affecting perceptions of credibility, accountability, and responsibility. Discussions about transparency, institutional trust, and family protection intensified as audiences speculated about the stakes. The narrative extended beyond administrative details, touching on broader social, ethical, and cultural considerations. For viewers, this complexity increased engagement, as they considered not only the facts at hand but the potential ripple effects across media, institutions, and public opinion. And then, just when the story seemed to have reached a temporary plateau, a new development emerged. A subtle post, an anonymous comment, or a cryptic reference hinted at further behind-the-scenes activity, steps that could escalate tension, shift perception, or reveal previously hidden details. The timing and significance were unclear, but the effect on audience attention was immediate. Curiosity surged, speculation intensified, and anticipation for the next update became almost unbearable. The narrative had entered a new phase, one where stakes were higher, uncertainty deeper, and the potential for dramatic revelations greater than ever before. By now, the narrative surrounding the alleged school record discrepancies had reached a point of high tension, with multiple threads of speculation, emotion, and media coverage intertwining into a complex, almost cinematic story. What began as a simple rumor had grown into a global conversation, fueled by the unpredictability of digital media, the high stakes of family reputation, and the innate human fascination with mystery. At the heart of this drama remained Prince Harry, whose alleged urgent return to the UK became the focal point for discussion, analysis, and speculation worldwide. The nature of the alleged discrepancies had become a key point of analysis. Observers debated whether the issue was a minor clerical error, a miswritten date or slight variation in a name, or if it hinted at deeper administrative inconsistencies. This ambiguity kept the story alive, allowing audiences to project fears, theories, and emotional interpretations onto the narrative. One of the defining characteristics of this evolving story was the multiplicity of interpretations. Each small detail, an unusual travel decision, a cryptic social media post, or a vague news report, could be read in countless ways, each feeding suspense and maintaining engagement. Prince Harry's response, rumored to be swift and deliberate, further intensified the drama. Flight arrangements, timing, and security logistics were analyzed in detail by commentators, journalists, and social media users alike. Was the rapid return a precautionary measure to protect Archie Harrison, a calculated effort to manage media narratives, or an instinctive reaction of a father prioritizing his child's safety above all else? Each interpretation offered insight into the pressures of public life, while simultaneously creating more suspense for the audience. Every action became a piece of a puzzle, and viewers watched closely, trying to predict the next move. Media coverage acted as both amplifier and magnifier. Traditional outlets attempted to report responsibly, balancing verification with the need to inform a curious public. Tabloids and online platforms, however, leaned into sensationalism, framing the story with dramatic language and emphasizing urgency. Influencers and social media commentators added their own analysis, speculation, and emotional reactions, creating a feedback loop where coverage fueled further speculation, which in turn generated more coverage. The result was a narrative that evolved in real time, shaped not only by facts but by perception, emotion, and audience participation. The psychological dynamics of the story were equally compelling. Humans are naturally drawn to unresolved tension, ambiguity, and potential scandal. When verified information is scarce, audiences engage in speculation, emotional projection, and pattern recognition. The alleged discrepancies, whether minor or consequential, provided the perfect catalyst for this cognitive and emotional engagement. Every unanswered question became a hook, every contradiction a cliffhanger, and every subtle development a reason to stay tuned. This interplay between uncertainty and engagement ensured that attention remained high, even as the story continued to evolve over hours and days. Online communities played a pivotal role in shaping the narrative. Analytical threads dissected timelines, compared documents, and attempted to piece together hidden truths. Emotional responses ranged from sympathy for the family to outrage at perceived administrative failures. Conspiratorial interpretations suggested intentional leaks or strategic manipulation. The diversity of engagement highlighted the interactive nature of modern storytelling. The audience was not merely consuming information, but actively participating in creating meaning and shaping suspense. This interactivity added layers of complexity, as every new perspective influenced how others interpreted events. The ambiguity surrounding the alleged discrepancies also contributed to ongoing tension. No official confirmation clarified the exact nature of the issue, leaving room for endless speculation. In this vacuum, minor details took on exaggerated importance. A single misphrased statement or vague post could trigger widespread interpretation, debate, and further storytelling. The absence of definitive answers became a central feature of the narrative, sustaining suspense and emotional engagement. Audiences were left with questions. Was this an innocent clerical error, or was something more significant occurring behind the scenes? Could the rumored discrepancies impact public perception, family dynamics, or institutional credibility? Historical context amplified the story's resonance. The royal family's visibility, combined with a history of media scrutiny and past controversies, shaped how audiences interpreted new information. Previous administrative errors, misreported incidents, and publicized family conflicts provided a lens through which minor details were imbued with heightened significance. Every action, every statement, and every perceived inconsistency was filtered through collective memory, adding layers of suspense and cultural meaning. Audiences could not help but compare the present situation to past events, seeking patterns, anticipating outcomes, and projecting implications. Questions of motive further deepened the narrative. Who might benefit from the spread of the rumor? Was it a genuine leak, an insider clarification, or a strategic effort to provoke discussion? Each possibility created new hooks and intensified audience curiosity. The ambiguity of intent added a psychological thrill. Audiences speculated about hidden agendas, secret strategies, and unspoken tensions. This uncertainty ensured sustained engagement, as every update, post, or comment could confirm, refute, or complicate existing theories. The potential consequences of the alleged discrepancies also loomed large. Even minor errors, if interpreted as meaningful, could influence public perception, media narratives, and family reputation. The story had expanded from administrative details to a broader discussion of trust, transparency, and accountability. For audiences, the stakes felt real, even if the underlying facts were unclear. Emotional investment grew as viewers considered the implications for the individuals involved, the media landscape, and the public's understanding of high-profile families. And just as the narrative seemed poised for temporary stability, a new development emerged. A subtle, cryptic post suggested that behind-the-scenes action was taking place, something that could escalate tension, shift perceptions, or reveal hidden information. The timing, significance, and intent were unclear, but the effect on audience attention was immediate. Curiosity spiked, speculation intensified, and anticipation for the next development reached fever pitch. The story had entered a new, more dramatic phase, with stakes higher than ever and suspense peaking for audiences eager to follow each unfolding moment. Closes with the story at a critical juncture. The alleged school record discrepancies have evolved into a multidimensional narrative, intertwining human emotion, media amplification, audience participation, and cultural significance. Each development, whether real, interpreted, or imagined, adds tension, fuels engagement, and leaves viewers eager for the next revelation.